Okay, so we calculated cardiac output and we looked at stroke volume and heart rate, the pulse. Um, Here are variables that influence heart rate. And figure 19.23 is showing sympathetic innervation of nodal cells. So here is our axon of the sympathetic nervous system. You remember this is fight or flight. This is releasing norepinephrine. And here we have epinephrine that came from the adrenal gland. So we have epinephrine and we have norepinephrine released from these sympathetic nerves. And this is our nodal cell. The epinephrine is opening up a channel here and is causing a cascade of events that result in the activation of these calcium channels, causing depolarization. So in essence, what's going on here is norepinephrine and epinephrine are resulting in greater depolarization, more quickly depolarizing these nodal cells. So if the nodal cells depolarize more quickly, if the pacemaker moves faster, well, guess what? The heart moves faster. And that is our heart rate. So the sympathetic nervous system can speed up the heart. Let's go ahead and move forward. And they talk about several different things here. Positive and negative chronotropic agents. So a chronograph is a watch. Chrono is time. Tropic to changing the timing. So negative chronotropic agents are going to slow the heart, and positive chronotropic agents are going to speed them up. So let's take a look at some of these positive chronotropic agents. So we saw norepinephrine and epinephrine. Thyroid hormone is going to help increase the number of receptors for norepinephrine, so it enhances norepinephrine. This will help speed the heart. Caffeine inhibits the breakdown of cyclic AMP, so it helps to keep this pathway going. So this is another positive chronotropic agent. This can speed your heart. I think we knew that. So some chemicals that can affect that. Just another important thing, venous return. So this is the blood that's coming back to the heart, the venous return. I'm going to take a look at this over on our paper here. So this is my heart, and the amount of blood that comes back is the venous return. So we could have 100 mLs. Let's put another 0. We have 100 mLs. We got 10 mLs. The amount of blood that comes back. The more blood that comes back, the more the heart will expand. The greater the heart's volume gets bigger. So the more blood returning to the heart, the more blood can be pumped out. And so let's imagine our thin filaments, or filamentous actin, and it's got the same structure that we saw in chapter 10 in AMP1, thin and thick filaments. So let's go ahead and change color here. Put my thick filaments and myosin in here. So these are my thick filaments in here. Thin and thick filaments, we remember those guys. So these are in the cardiac muscles as well as skeletal muscles. So if I have a great deal of blood returning back to the heart, there's going to be a lot more stretch of these muscles. Be pulled out. And the further I stretch these cardiac muscles out, the greater the force as they contract back. So what does that tell us? More venous return, more blood coming back to the heart means more forceful contractions. And the way that I remember this is you just think about a battering ram. When you pull back on the pendulum and you ram it into the castle door, the further you pull back, the more energy you can have as you come forward. And that's kind of what we see with the cardiac muscle. The more stretch that's placed on it, the more forceful the contraction. There's more interaction between the thin and thick filaments of the myocardium. This has a name here. So this is Frank Starling law, which just tells us the more blood returning back to the heart, the more forceful the contraction, the more blood is going to be moved out. Okay, let's take a look at a table here that has a lot of cool information on it. So factors that are affecting cardiac output. So this was our measurement. It tells us the rate at which the heart's working, the efficiency of the heart, how many mLs of blood per minute. So how hard is our heart working? How effective is our heart? Well, it depends on these chronotropic agents. How fast is the heart beating? And so we can increase heart rate with positive chronotropic agents. We can decrease the heart rate with other neurotransmitters, other hormones. And if I speed up the heart rate, well, let's take a look here. If I increase the heart rate, this is one of the factors in calculating cardiac output. I make heart rate go up, cardiac output goes up. That makes sense. If I decrease the heart rate goes down, well, cardiac output's going down. So these are hinged together. Heart rate is directly related to cardiac output. Venous return. So we just said the more blood returning to the heart, the greater the stroke volume. So that's what we see here. We have more venous return, more blood returning back to the heart. We're going to get more blood ejected. Now, if I increase stroke volume, well, of course, that's going to increase cardiac output. So more blood coming back to the heart, greater stroke volume, larger cardiac output. Sure, I get that. Makes sense. Afterload. This is the resistance that we have to blood's movement. So here's what's meant by resistance. The walls of these vessels. So as we push blood through any one of these vessels, there's resistance, friction of the blood up against the walls. And so this makes sense if we think of a really wide vessel. There's going to be a lot of blood that's moving through, a good volume of this blood's moving through. The middle is meeting no resistance at all. It's just a small fraction up against the walls that are coming into any resistance with it. So a wide vessel is going to have very little afterload. But if we narrow this thing down, if we vasoconstrict it, now there's a lot of resistance up against these walls. There's a lot of afterload. So it says this is inversely correlated with the stroke volume. So let's imagine that, okay? Stroke volume is the amount of blood that's moving out of this ventricle. If there's a lot of resistance against it, it's not going to be able to move out. It's not going to be able to push out as much blood. There'll be more blood in the end systolic volume. So a greater amount of blood remaining in the heart because that afterload is preventing it from being ejected. Resistance of the walls of those vessels. So we've been talking about atherosclerosis, and now's a good time to talk about that. If you have atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, one, they can't stretch to accommodate more blood. Two, they tend to be more narrow. It's going to be a greater amount of afterload in somebody who has significant atherosclerosis, which is going to reduce the stroke volume, which is going to reduce your cardiac output. Okay, so chronotropic agents, agents that change the heart's rate. So inotropic agents are ones that affect the force of the heart's contraction. And changing the force of the heart is, of course, going to change the stroke volume, which is once again related to the cardiac output. Okay. development of the heart you can read on your own, but I'm not going to put it on any test. A couple of things I thought we should note, just for the heck of it, to give us a point of reference of how much blood is being moved here. So if we look at a can of Coke, a can of soda is going to have 355 mLs. So 70 mLs is just a small fraction of a can of Coke. So every time the heart beats, it's not moving a lot of blood per beat. It beats all day. Okay.